Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Rick Parkhill. I'm the director of brand storytelling, and I'm extremely pleased to have with me today Rupert Maconick, the executive producer and founder of Saville. For those of you who aren't familiar with Rupert, he's produced award-winning brand-sponsored documentaries that include 5B for Johnson & Johnson, Own the Room by Shopify, Lo and Behold, NetScout. Some of the most iconic examples of brand storytelling today have been produced by Mr. Maconick. He's also produced feature films, including Eddie the Eagle with Hugh Jackman, and he has a forthcoming film with Liam Neeson called Memory that's directed by Martin Campbell, the director of Casino Royale. His films have enjoyed both theatrical and streaming platform distribution and appeared at Sundance Film Festival and Cannes Film Festival. So please welcome Rupert Maconick. Come on, Rupert. Unmute and turn on your video, and let's have. Good to see you, my man.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's always good to see you.
Good
so
to
listen,
see you. I've got a face built for radio, so
you look good.
I look tanned.
you look tanned and comfortable.
I still have a face for radio, but it's all good.
So listen, we want to talk today about brand sponsored films.
Right.
What is a brand sponsored film? Why would a brand want to sponsor a film? And to start with, there's a nomenclature issue associated with branded content. There's so many different terms thrown around about branded content, sponsored content, brand funded. You prefer to call your films brand sponsored. Tell us why that is, and what's the difference?
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit macro, and then I'll go micro into that. So just a little bit of my background. I've produced hundreds of commercials. I've had a company for more than 20 years, and I fully understand the advertising world, fully understand everyone's roles within major brands and agencies and media agencies and so on. We probably saw the shift more quickly than most, because around 2013, we started getting phone calls. We worked with fairly high profile directors like Werner Herzog and Martin Campbell and so on. And we started getting approached by major brands and agencies saying, we want to get on this new streaming platform, Netflix. And remember, it was only 7 or 8 years ago, and now it sort of owns the world. So they basically said, we want to get on Netflix. How do we do it? So we've been doing this for quite a number of years, about 7 or 8 years now, and we've got pretty good at it. And we've just embraced the disrupted landscape. So if you think about it, marketing's a pyramid, right? So you've got marketing at the top, every marketer knows this, and then you've got a multitude of ways to market in this disrupted landscape. In the old analog world, if you think about it, it's only 10, 15 years ago, right? It was traditionally you make a big ad, you do some print. That was kind of the business for a very long time. Now it's very disrupted, as we all know, and the audience has migrated onto all sorts of places. So any marketer has to do the following. They have to make commercials, they have to make branded content, they have to do social, they have to do influencers, they have to do PR, they have to do product placement, and a whole bunch of things I haven't even mentioned. What we're talking about today is sponsored entertainment. So what we said is, in one sentence, is we collaborate with agencies and brands to produce sponsored entertainment, largely feature docs, i.e. 90 minutes, that supports the brand's marketing goals or brand purpose, but can also be sold and distributed to commercial-free streamers like Netflix. So very specifically, we're doing this because we realize the audience has moved to 2 places. The audience has moved really to social, as we all know, and then they've also moved a huge portion of them to commercial-free streamers. Particularly during a pandemic, everyone's been on Netflix and all the other ones. So we've been able to develop a strategy to reach those people. And what we say to every marketer, in the same way that you have a strategy for social and you have a strategy for influencers, you need a strategy to reach people on streamers, because it's only getting bigger. The biggest companies in the world are putting, billions, probably there'll be trillions soon, into streamers. And that's where the audience is going. They each want people to stay in their ecosystem. That's what it's really all about, right? Apple wants everyone in their ecosystem, Amazon, and so on. So they want to capture the audience, and we need to reach the audience where they are. Now, the reason why I say this is sponsored entertainment, not branded content, is really branded content has sort of become, some of it's quite good. Just want to say that, you know, Patagonia makes kind of cool stuff. Yeti, I know you interviewed those and so on. And they're sort of embracing their core audience, which is, you know, the type of people who buy Yeti products and Patagonia products. But a large proportion of branded content are just long ads put on YouTube. And it's interesting, one of the docs we made, lo and behold, the Werner Herzog documentary that we got into Sundance and we sold to Magnolia. You know, we were talking to Magnolia, they're a very, very good distributor of films. And one of the first things they said to me was, Rupert, you're in this advertising brand space. We don't really understand who's watching branded content because we wouldn't watch it. We're distributors. We know what the audience wants to watch. And it just seems to be long ads that are actually made for the people who are making it and for the people who paid for it. We don't really think there's an audience. So what we say is whatever we make actually has to have an audience. It has to be probably a format that people want to buy, i.e. the streamers want to buy, which is 90 minutes is a platform they want to buy. Now, the problem with most branded content, it is just a long ad. And the challenge, in fact, the Urban Dictionary definition, if you Google it, branded content, are long, boring ads that people put on YouTube that no one in their right mind would watch. So, it literally is not that.
That's in the Maconick dictionary.
No, it's literally. And so I literally look at that and I go, well, who is watching that? The problem right now is what's happened is you have a creative agency where, you know, they used to write ads, right? And they're very good at them. And now the audience has moved to, you know, YouTube and so on. So they write a long ad, 4 minutes rather than 30 seconds. And, you know, I've done a lot of them. And then you've got a media agency who would make their money putting an ad on AMC or CBS or whatever. They still make their money putting it on YouTube. And YouTube's not going to say this doesn't really work. So people are buying likes and they're buying views. And what we say is it's a little bit broken, to be honest, because just buying likes and views isn't a real audience. It's very different to putting an ad on AMC, for example. You're watching Breaking Bad, you're reaching that audience, they're already there. That's not buying likes or views. That's actually really the ones where they are. Whereas if you buy likes and views, which is basically what people are doing, it's not real. You've just bought a like and a view. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't drive sales. It's just cosmetic. It's equivalent of a movie company or a movie studio making a bad movie and then buying tickets to the movie and saying this is the box office hit. It's not fundamentally real. What we're saying is we actually have to make something, in the case of feature docs, where people actually want to watch it because it has good reviews and distributors realize there's a value in it because it's going to get an audience, so they'll buy it. And so far we've had a 100% track record of selling these things, and we're doing a lot more this year, actually.
So Rupert, let's talk about what are the benefits here. Why would a brand be interested in a brand sponsored film? Let's take, for example, 5B. It's great film, very emotional. It's a great hero story of the nurses in San Francisco General Hospital. You don't know it's Johnson & Johnson until the very end of the film where there's a J&J logo. So what's in it for Johnson & Johnson to take that kind of big swing, which there's a lot of risk involved. There's some money to put up to fund a film like that. There's no guarantee. What gets them off the mark, Rupert, to say, I'm in on that. I'm going to fund a film like that?
That was a lot of questions, Rick.
Yeah, you can take them one at a time. Okay. So let's start with, why would a brand want to consider?
Yeah, let's start with that. I think let's break it down. Then let me give some examples. All right. So there's a few fundamental reasons to do this. All right. Is the audience has migrated to commercial-free streamers. So you have to create entertainment, not ads. They're commercial-free. It's that simple. So you have to reach them in a different way. All right. It's actually an old model. It's radio plays in the 1930s and it's TV in the 1940s. It's Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. It's, Mutual of Omaha family company, matching family values. They didn't insert their insurance policies in that wildlife show. It would have been very odd if they'd done that. So the point there is you match your own values with what you're trying to achieve. And I also think the key to this is everyone is talking about marketing being brand purpose and brand purpose being marketing, all right? And everyone is now saying that young people want to support brands that do good. Young people will veer away from brands where they feel they're being sold to, or where they don't feel that the brand is a authentic supporter of good, right? So everyone's talking, we have to have a brand purpose. We have to be culturally relevant. Now, there's no better way of talking about your brand purpose, whether it's sustainability, diversity, inclusion, building communities, whatever it is, than actually making an authentic doc. If you make an authentic doc, you've actually got time to tell a story about climate change or Black lives or LGBTQ rights or whatever it is, because you've actually got 90 minutes there rather than 30 seconds. So the reason to do this is an authentic way to explain what your brand purpose is. And unlike an ad, it's not quite so self-serving, because it's something which you're talking about what you stand for as a brand. It's not really about you the whole time. It's about what your company values are. So I think that's a fundamental reason to do it. And I think particularly now, 2020 is a tipping point, right? We've just had this unusual year and a half. And there's two problems in the world. One's environmental, which is climate change, COVID, and so on. And the other one's inequality, which is Black lives, LGBTQ rights, female equality, global inequality, social inequality, financial inequality. And the question for our time are, how are 10 billion people who are going to show up on the planet by 2050 going to have a Western standard of living without destroying the planet? So every brand has to be culturally relevant about that. They're all saying we have to stand for something. They can't sit on the sidelines. They have to be on the right side of history. And actually their consumers are voting with how they spend money. Uber and Lyft is a good example. You know, Uber had I think they got rid of the CEO who was a little bit out there and said some unfortunate things, whereas Lyft are really progressive. So I remember when Trump was banning Muslims coming into the country, they donated $1 million to the ACLU. And a lot of my friends who are younger are going, we're just going to take a Lyft. We're not going to take an Uber. So people will vote with their pocketbooks. Mm-hmm. So as a brand, if you can show that you're more progressive than your competitors, then that's actually going to help your bottom line.
So are you saying that
you have to do that in an authentic way? Can't just do an ad.
So you're saying that, documentary filmmaking is one of the best ways that a brand can demonstrate their purpose and their
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do something around climate change, you don't want to run around saying, I'm whatever company it is, aren't I great? You want to say, we support these people who are making a difference, and they match our values. So Johnson & Johnson, let me just finish, because I'm circling back to one of your multiple questions. So Johnson & Johnson is a good example, right? We had a very good experience working with Brendan and Brett. They came, it was a pitch, and lots of people pitched, I can tell you that. And we came into it and we said, look,
let's tell the audience who Brendan and Brett are at UM Studios.
Brendan and Brett, were from UM Studios, and they now have a slightly different name of a company, Traverse
32.
That's the one. And they're part of IPG. They're nice guys, and we had a really good experience with them because we talked about the model we thought would work best, and they were open to listening and experiencing that process. So they came to us with a specific problem, which is, I'm circling back to your answer. So Brendan had done quite a lot of research with J&J, and they had discovered that that J&J that one of their biggest audience is nurses. Remember, there's 3 million nurses or something like that in the States, but we're running out of nurses. Young people don't want to become nurses. So they needed to change the image of nurses. That was the goal, to get young people to want to become nurses. So essentially, it's almost like a nurse recruitment video, right? So we came to them and said, first of all, it's got to be interesting. It's got to be progressive, and we should do a story about hero nurses. Let's make it about heroic people doing unusual things. And that's actually, if you really think about it, what the story of most docs are. It's an unsung hero in an unusual place doing something incredible, whether it's free solo, Jiro dreams of sushi in a sushi restaurant making amazing food, whatever it is, an unusual character doing something unusual. Yeah. And in this case, they had to be heroes. Now, we said we need to do a really powerful hero nurse story. And the whole point was, it wasn't about J&J, it was about getting young people to become nurses. So it wasn't really that's what the cause they wanted to support. So that's partly why we call it sponsored entertainment, because it's not about the brand always, it's about the brand's core values. So once we had focused in on that, we then recommended a development phase where we would hunt for a story. So whatever story we found had to be an unusual story of unsung nurse heroes that no one had ever told before, that was better than anything Netflix has already, or they wouldn't buy it, or Amazon, or what have you. And it also had to match J&J's core values. So we were able, after a lot of research, we found the true story of nurses fighting the AIDS crisis in the 80s and 90s at Ward 5B in San Francisco. And we were able to say, look, this is really heroic. All their patients died. Some of the nurses got HIV from needle pricks. And this is part of your DNA, J&J. You know, you make HIV drugs. You're pro-LGBTQ. You support RED. And some of the people who used to work on the ward at Ward 5B now work at Johnson & Johnson. So this very much matches who you are. So they totally got that. And we actually made a concept trailer of showing what the film would look like. And they actually started crying in the room. So we figured that we'd probably found a good story at that point. So that was kind of very important. And the development process of this is actually the key to the whole thing. Very much so. If we don't have a good, strong story, which is fairly obvious, but sometimes people forget this, then we're not going to have a lot of success. No matter how many media dollars you spend, no matter what fancy director you put on, doesn't really matter. If the story's not very interesting, then no one's going to watch it.
So one of the problems with this model is that people in the C-suite are used to looking at metrics that they understand.
Sure.
Nielsen ratings, as flawed as they are, have been accepted by the club, you know, right, between the advertising agencies, the media agencies, and the brands. They agreed that we're going to base our investments on these ratings. And I hear this time and again from brands, Rupert, that, you know, we don't know how to sell this project through in the C-suite because we can't really attach tangible metrics to it. So what was in this for any one of your clients, the return on investment? How are they weighing it?
Well, first of all, let's talk about data, because stats are all over the place. You're absolutely right. 10 years ago, you had the Nielsen's, Breaking Bad, the ratings, you knew what people were watching, it's pretty accurate. Now it's all over the place. No one can measure anything properly. I mean, and the other problem is no one owns the data apart from YouTube, streamers, Facebook, Netflix, and so on. So they're manipulating that the whole time. And we do know one thing, that, you know, Facebook and Google manipulate things any way they want if there's money involved. So I would tell everyone they have to question all data. Now, we've learned that we can measure things with PR impressions, which a lot of people do, and we've successfully did that. So, for example, NetScout, the CMO of NetScout, and they're a data company, said their media impressions went up by 10 times, and they had the largest number of business inquiries in their 30-year history as a result, the year of the doc. So that's very tangible. Now, with J&J, it wasn't so much about them, it was actually about the audience. So, you know, we have case studies and stuff, and also a lot of stats where it shows that it did have a lot of PR metrics, and it also changed the image of nursing, which was the goal. So, and then thirdly, let me just finish. The Nielsen's actually measure stuff on streamers. People just don't ask them about it. So I've actually called them, how do you measure stuff? So they actually can measure stuff on streamers. But the whole point about this, it isn't necessarily the audience that watches it on streamers. If you make a feature doc, it's actually things like the audience who see it at film festivals. It's the number of reviews you get. It's that stuff which is very tangible. And that's the stuff that people should be looking at. So I think in summary, there's a few things there. First of all, how do you measure anything now? Because everyone's fudging everything, to be honest, on the data. And you have to question all data right now. I've met with people actually at Brand Storytelling where they said they were measuring things based on, for major brands, oh, we give such and such a point if someone gives us a like. And then if they give us an emoji, we give them 2 points. I'm like, that's not science. That's just, I don't know what that is. But that's very subjective is all I'll say. So my point is, measuring anything is complex now. The people who own the data are not terribly transparent and will manipulate that any way they want. And you can measure these things through PR media impressions. Also, you can measure them by the fact that someone writes a check for them. This is one of the few occasions where marketing dollars can be turned into a product that you can sell. And as you know, we've successfully sold 3 feature docs.
Well, let's talk about that then. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts. What's the structure of a brand sponsored film? Brand puts up the money for the film, produces it. They have an equity role in the film.
Yeah.
So tell us how the numbers work as much as you can. What's an investment look like from a brand for a 90-minute doc?
Sure. So let's just talk about the length first, because I think that's a good thing to address, and the more address, ROI and recoupment and so on. So we've been focusing on largely feature docs because we know the streamers want to buy them. They don't want to buy a 20-minute doc. They don't want to buy a 30-minute doc. Anyone in the doc space will tell you that there's no real buyers for short films, short docs. So the reason for this is people don't really watch them. So we've all seen Octopus Teacher, we've all seen Free Solo, we've all seen American Factory, the last 3 feature docs that won the Oscars. Probably none of us on this, whoever listens to this thing, can even name the 20-minute docs that won the Oscars, because we don't watch them. And I would say that everyone who's listening in has probably watched a feature doc in the last year, and they probably haven't watched a 20-minute doc for their own pleasure. They might have done it for work, they look at some reel or something, but we don't watch them. So the streamers know this. And if you think about it, every streamer says feature or TV on it, right? We still have that choice. So in the middle of the week, we might just want to do dinner and a movie, sitting down, you make some food, you get your Instacart or whatever, you sit down, I want to watch a doc. It's 90 minutes, we know how long it's going to take. And you don't really want to get stuck in a series. At the weekend, you might want to binge watch an entire series, for example. So we know that they want to buy these. And the truth is, a huge proportion of the thing that's on streamers, every streamer that says originals, is actually acquired independently or at festivals, film markets. So all the film festivals are actually just film markets where you buy stuff. Now, we're just tapping into the existing structure that happens already, which is why we've been reasonably successful, because we know if we make a really good doc with the right filmmaker on a really good subject, we're quite likely to buy it, because ultimately all of the streamers are obviously brands, and their job is to sell subscriptions. So the more good stuff they have on their platform, the more subscriptions they're going to get. That's the entire model. And they know that if they can make 40, they can make 40 or 50 feature docs for 100 million, whereas one Baz Luhrmann scripted series, I think it was The Get Up a few years ago, that cost 100 million. So if your whole job is to just get stuff out there, 40 or 50 docs a year on that investment is a better investment than one series, which might be a hit or a miss. So we know that people want to buy them. So which comes back to the how it works. First of all, on all our projects, the brands own them because they pay for them. Secondly, they're exec producers. They're very much involved in the creative process, but same as you'd make a movie or anything like that. And part of our development phase is to get everyone involved and on the same page, and that's what we've done each time. Now, we're making them for around 2.5 to 3, and that includes a lot of PR and a sales team and all sorts of things that we cover in our budget. But we've been selling them for about that as well. So the brand may make, we don't promise they're going to make all their money back, but they're going to make a large chunk of their money back. And that's one of the few opportunities you can do that. In addition, when you make one of these things, you don't have to spend any money on media. And the media dollars in advertising is crazy. It's $500 billion is spent on media. So that, and traditionally when you make a piece of branded content or an ad, right, you make an ad for, I don't know, $1 million, just say for the sake of argument, you would spend 10 times that amount on media. If you make a piece of branded content, you put it on YouTube, you might spend 300 or 400 grand on the piece of content, but you're going to spend $3 or $4 million giving it to YouTube to get it to push that out there. Those are sort of the rough numbers. And in fact, car commercials, I have a lot of people, friends who work in that world, they might spend several $1 million on a car commercial, right? But they'll spend 30 times the cost of production on media, which is why we're always stuck with these sort of boring sheet metal commercials of cars driving around. We can't get away from them because they might spend $3 or $4 million on an ad. they'll spend $90 million on media. So what we're saying is you don't actually have to spend any money on media. We can actually sell it and you make some money back. And you don't pay any talent either. We don't pay talent on docs. It's a doc, not an ad. So these are all things that people should bear in mind when they're doing this. And so when you look at the level of investment, people will happily spend 200 or 300 grand on a piece of branded content and then 2 or 3 million giving it to YouTube. But that's the same price as a doc. There's no recoupment there. Just YouTube will just say, oh, we bought some likes, and isn't it great? You know.
But at $2.5 to $3 million for a 90-minute feature doc, that comes with a top director talent and a quality production, i.e. 5B, lo and behold.
Yeah, it's got to be, the thing is, it's got to be what the top 1% of docs. None of us are watching anything that's the bottom 99%. We all want the top doctor, dentist, TikTok person, influencer. We want cook, chef. We only want to see the best films. We don't want to see the bad ones. So we've got to get really good reviews. It's got to be good. And that's the key to this. I always find it a bit challenging when people just talk about content like it's a bag of bananas or something, because there's good films and bad films, you know, and I think people should be defining what it is. Is this a good documentary or a bad documentary? It's like, I think advertising marketing is the intersection of art and sort of commerce and data. Data is important, but there is an art side to it. You know, you look at someone like John Hegarty, you know, he says it's all art. It's, you know, you tap into the zeitgeist, you write a great TV commercial, and obviously he's made some great ones. And then that taps into the zeitgeist. You can't guarantee that. And it's difficult to measure what's good and bad. And that's the other thing about the film industry. No one's ever been able to break it down into actually saying what's good and bad. They tried 30 years ago, I think, and they tried to do sort of analysis of scripts and so on. And they were unable, because it's all about the execution. You can't just look at a script and say, is this good or bad? 90 minutes. If it's well directed, then it could be really good. If it's badly directed, probably not. You know, you might have an amazing doc on climate change, or you might have a really boring one because it's down to the characters and it's down to the person who executes, the taste level of it. So all of the things we do, it has to be well executed. So what I would say is, whoever a brand works with has to have a good track record of doing this, in the same way that the entire film and TV world is built around getting, in the TV world, great showrunners. You know, they paid, you know, Netflix is renowned for making these crazy deals with major showrunners, just giving them 200 or 300 million, just saying, you're coming with us, because they want to get the best guys. Same with directors, you know, so there's a limited number of really, really good people and producers who can execute this stuff. And those are the kind of people they're targeting. So whoever anyone works with has to have a really good track record of doing this. And I have to say, it's taken us a long time to figure out some of the pitfalls as we've done it. But the more of these that we do, the better that we get at it, to be honest, because we've got really granular and specific about the steps that we have to follow to be successful. And that's kind of the real key to success in this.
I've got one more question for you. While I pose this, turn your notifications off if you could.
Okay, I have no idea how to do that.
Up in the right corner. You see that, those little bars? Or otherwise we'll just continue to listen to your ding.
Okay, hang on. Which bar?
Are you on a Mac?
I am.
At the top bar, go all the way to the right and click on that, and it will pull down your notifications bar.
Hang on.
And then scroll to the top and select Do Not Disturb.
Okay, hang on.
This will be a YouTube tutorial for turning off notifications during a Zoom meeting.
Let me turn it off though.
You scroll up to the top and hit the do not disturb.
Okay, there we go.
All right, good enough. So
I learned something.
Yeah, it's good. You learn something every day, and you're on the right track. So let's give us just a quick synopsis of the process. I hate to keep using the word problem, but what's some of the barriers for brands getting into we'll just ignore it. What are the barriers for brands getting into this kind of business and putting money up for a documentary film is the process, because it's outside of their normal time frames that they're used to dealing with at annual basis and quarterly results. And it could take years for a documentary film to make it to the screen. So how did, tell us about the process and the timeline.
So there's a couple of things there. So first of all, it takes about 9 months. So let me break down the process. So we generate about 2 months of the research and development phase where we find a story. That's when we find a story, then we attach a director. We actually don't attach a director first. We find the story, and then we'll attach the appropriate director. So for example, if we're doing something around sustainability, and we end up doing something where it's there's a theme of female empowerment, for example, we want a female director. If we're ended up doing a story around, I don't know, Black lives, we obviously want a Black director. So we've learned to find the story first, and then find the appropriate director who's going to be really passionate about that. We don't do it the other way. You don't want to attach some old white guy and then you end up doing a female empowerment story. It's not going to work. So that's our process at the first couple of months. Then it takes 3 or 4 months of pre-production and shooting, and then the rest is post-production. So it's about a 9-month process, 9-10 months, something like that. Now, the thing that we've learned, we just talked to a really major brand today, one of the most iconic brands you could think of, and they were saying the same thing. Well, our timelines are quarters and 9 months, seems like a long term. And I said, well, actually not when you talk about your brand purpose. And that's really what these docs should be about. If you're a brand that's getting rid of global plastics, you've been one of the most plastic polluters in the world or something, and you're changing all your bottling plants or something, that's something you can talk about. And it's an evergreen story, because that you're doing it, that doc could work for the next 5 or 10 years. If you're doing a story about LGBTQ rights, I would argue that 5B is a pretty much evergreen story. You can still look at that, and it doesn't date, because it's a historical story already. So that's an opportunity where the time, how long it takes to come out is less important than if it's a story which taps into the brand's core values, their marketing pillars, and their brand purpose. Could I just pause 1 second, because I've got someone at my door?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hang on 1 second. So just as a recap, it's 9 months to make a doc, 2 months of development where we mine for the story. And then within that 2 months, that's when we find a director. So once we don't want to have attached some old white guy and we do a female empowerment story, the director has to kind of reflect the story we're trying to tell. So what we've learned is to find the story first, and then we find a really good documentarian who really is passionate about the story. We actually are very keen not to work with directors who've done a lot of ads and then a couple of docs. What we've learned is we almost want directors who don't really understand the advertising world because they're going to make they're just going to focus on making a really good doc. My team fully understands the advertising world. We understand all the boxes we need to tick, and we understand the process. And part of the development phase is actually to get to a story which completely supports the brand's purpose, ticks all the boxes of their marketing pillars. There's always 3 marketing pillars that a brand has. Never 4, never 1. I don't know why, and I can guarantee you every brand that is on this call or anyone's ever worked with will have the following: sustainability, building communities, diversity, and inclusion. And pretty much every single one has those. And we can make great docs around all of those. And every few years, they want to define their brand purpose. And that's where we say, that's why you should be making a doc. And we will be able to make a doc that's an evergreen story that you can launch in 9 months to, or so. But it's something you'll have forever. So, 5B is a good example. They're still showing that at nurse events. I mean, that's 2 or 3 years down the road.
Is the investment mitigated, the risk mitigated for the brand, where they can invest in stages? I mean, they can go to a development stage, like, we don't like any of these stories, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah. Roughly, it costs about 10% of the budget. It's about 300 grand to develop, which is not a huge amount of money if you're, Coca-Cola or one of these huge brands. But if they say they don't want to do it after that, we've yet to meet a brand who's done that. But every time they get very excited, because that's actually the fun bit. They own the IP. They're going to own, ultimately they're going to own the finished film. You can't really own a news story, but if you make the film, you'll own it. So, but the point is that it'll be their thing. There'll be exec producers on the project, and our process of development is very interactive. So we're like, we bring in a lot of documentary researchers. We don't bring in 2 or 3, we actually bring 10 or 11, because we want to have a really big team hunting for a story. And what we found is 10 to 12 people doing it is better than one.
I'd love to, we don't have time to do this today, but I'd love to dive deeper into the development process.
Absolutely.
What happens during that 2 months
Sure.
of story searching and exploration, and how integrated the brand is with that? I think our brand audience would be really interested to hear what
I'm happy to do
the
that
development
anytime.
process is. Rupert, do you have anything in production you want to talk about right now, or can?
We've got a whole bunch of things, but we sign NDAs, and I would make people very unhappy if I started talking about them until they're actually ready.
We're here to spread happiness, not take it away.
Exactly. But my point, the good news is everyone's embracing this, because they've realized that it's a viable model. They've realized they have to make entertainment, not ads. And they've realized that maybe this is actually a better investment than making a piece of branded content or something like that. Maybe this is something that they should be doing. And what we say is it doesn't replace everything they're doing. It's one tool in their arsenal to reach the audience or consumers.
But let's hope that brands will more and more understand that the value of being what people are seeking instead of interrupting what they've found.
And I'd like to make one final point there, because everyone in marketing has read the David Ogilvy book that the brand has to be the hero. Made complete sense in the 1950s. You got the print ad of the New York Times or the whatever newspaper it is, and the guy's turning the page. You need the whiskey bottle there. You need the car there. You need, well, in those days, cigarettes and all sorts of things. You needed that right on the page, because otherwise you'd lost the audience. Now we're in a situation where the audience has 100,000 choices or more at their fingertips, probably more. And so now it's what the audience is interested in has to be the hero, or they simply won't watch it. You can't make anyone watch anything, no matter how many media dollars you pour into it, no matter how many things you're doing. It's got to be interesting, and it's got to be good and something they care about.
Well, congratulations on creating things that are interesting and are good and what people care about, because your films are getting a lot of attention and making it into festivals and getting bought by the streamers and even theatrical distribution. So kudos to you for doing this, Rupert. Will you come back and talk about a development process with us?
Happy to do that anytime.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
All right. Very good. Cheers. Have a good one. Bye.